Well, we've had our interview with David Ashford, Minister for Health and Social Care, but we do still have questions coming in. So not so many, which is probably what I think this should happen. And certainly some are very much coming from the same side. So I've sort of condensed a few. The borders opening, this is for you and the Chief Minister. If there's a surge in cases, will you be held responsible? And if there's any deaths possibly linked to opening the borders, would you be held accountable for the misconduct of public office? Wow, that's a biggie, isn't it?
Right. There is going to be people on both sides of the argument. There are people who are going to be concerned about the borders. I'm afraid we do have to accept that COVID is with us as a virus forever, and in the future, just as there is with flu, we have around about 40 deaths per year from flu. Tragically, in the future, there probably will be deaths from COVID-19. We can't keep the island shut forever. And the simple fact is, I know a lot of people are saying we're opening the borders too soon, but when isn't too soon? We've done what we can. The vaccine programme is rolling out exceptionally well. When do you open? Spanish flu, which I've given before, was around till 1954. Other viruses around permanently. COVID is likely to be around permanently. Do you open the borders in 6 months? Do you open it in a year, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years down the line? What point? We can only go off what we're seeing elsewhere, but COVID, there will be probably cases, and like I say, what we've got to look at is, and we've got to flip this, is it's not around the number of cases in the island. We may have a lot of cases, but if it's not putting pressure on the health services, which is what the fundamental reason of the lockdowns was to protect the health service, then that isn't a serious issue and wouldn't require restrictions.
How are we doing? I should have asked in the first part, ICU, because we had one last week.
Still one.
Still one.
Still one.
Okay.
But sadly, we do have to accept that COVID, like all the viruses, will circulate, and tragically, at some point, there will probably be a death from COVID-19.
A question on behalf of people in Northern Ireland regarding flights resuming and boats scheduled. Nothing scheduled until July. We are desperate to see family. Flights via Liverpool are working out at about £1,000, which is crazy.
I mean, that will be a matter for the private airlines. They will obviously work off what they believe is commercially viable. Many of the airlines may well think that it's not commercially viable to be operating those routes until the borders fully reopen because of the limited number and uptake. I fully accept the fact that, this is a dreadful time for families, Paul. It's been 12 months. I've heard some absolutely awful stories of where people have been separated from their loved ones. There's the mental health implications of that as well. So we do need to move forward, but that's sort of the other side to the first question you asked there. We had a first question that doesn't want the borders reopened, believes it's far too soon. We've got a second one there of people dying to get into the island to see their relatives. And somewhere in between, we've got to find that path, that difficult path of following the data and, doing things in a gradual and eased manner that probably won't satisfy either of those questioners, to be perfectly honest, because for one it's not fast enough, for the other it's too slow, and we need to find that difficult balance in the middle somewhere. And
it's going to be interesting to see how quickly the airlines, the boats are one thing, but the airlines, how quickly they can gear up again, I suppose, isn't it? Everyone seems to be ready for some sort of busy period once we know we can come and go.
I mean, our exit plan's very similar to the UK, so the industry as a whole will be gearing up around the much bigger jurisdictions than ours, because that's one of the things that will drive it. I wouldn't expect an airline to turn things on for a population of 80-odd thousand.
Logan Air said they're looking at it already, aren't they?
They are, and of course Logan Air's a wider network as well. It's not just the Isle of Man they serve. So I think we will start seeing more movement around June, but I know for some it is frustratingly slow, just as for others, like the first questioner, they see it as too fast.
This was written a bit ago, but it says at the time 11 cases in a cluster, some 700 people isolating. To me, isolation is not mitigation, and this comes up with this whole thing about the crossover between the two. Do you want to add anything more to that?
All I can do is what we've already said, that isolation is mitigation, because when we mitigate, we have to limit as far as possible still potential spread into those that are most vulnerable. So it's not about preventing spread, it's not about saying complete elimination strategy, but mitigation is still having measures in place. And isolation is one of the main mitigations. If you remove isolation, then there is no mitigation. Well, we've moved from having an elimination strategy to a mitigation strategy to a return to normal. Once you remove the isolation, which is your primary mitigation measure, then you're actually returning to normal, not to mitigation.
Okay. Chief Minister in his briefing made reference to the following CDC guidance when changing the isolation rules. Yet the lengthy list of symptoms provided on the CDC website are not considered by 111 when determining if people need a COVID test. Clearly, Komen is being selective in following the CDC guidance, which when it suits their plan.
Right. What seems to confuse people is
CDC,
the CDC, so the Centre for Disease Control.
Right.
But I think what the person's referencing there is the organisation called CDC, which is the US CDC, the American. It's the European Centre for Disease Control that is used
That's
on
confusing.
Ireland. No, to be fair, the Director of Public Health does clarify that every single time she speaks. She does actually say the ECDC, or certainly when I've been stood at the briefings, that's what she said. And the guidance there is what 111 follows. It is in line.
I can't understand how people who test positive for COVID only have to self-isolate for 10 days, but travellers must self-isolate for 21 days without a test, whilst new travellers from the 1st of May can leave their house after 14 days without a test. I think that people who are already self-isolating and struggling deserve some clarity. I think we sort of touched on that before.
Right, so in relation to the difference between the testing regimes, for a traveller that's coming in, they are coming still from an infected area, whereas the infection rate in the island is exceptionally low. We know that COVID can incubate for a good period of time, so that's why they have the ability for the 7-day and test. The 10-day, where people are saying, well, hang on, what about the high-risk contacts, and they're doing 10 days, well, we know for a fact they have been in contact with a positive case. That's why they're a high-risk contact. So that's why the 10 days to allow for the incubation period. For those travellers coming in with the 7-day test, we don't know that they, although they might be coming from a high infection region, although the UK's infection rate is coming down quite dramatically, we don't know for a fact they've been in contact, so it's a precautionary matter. The 21 days is exactly the same as we've had previously. If someone won't be tested, and we know how people can be asymptomatic with this virus, then I think it's perfectly reasonable if they're not willing to be tested for them to be isolated for the full reason.
Some, haven't you?
We have. We've had throughout that, and it's personal choice.
Yeah.
You know, you can't compel someone to undertake a medical procedure, and testing is a medical procedure.
Before the last question, I have one more because I forgot about in the first section. Was this rebuttal of Dr. Rachel Glover? Isn't that due by now? Is this still
No.
I was confused about which one.
Right, no, we issued. If you remember, I did clarify this. We issued a statement, but we have now been called for evidence before the.
So wasn't that one the other day
before
then?
the PAC? Right. So we
had one the other day with.
No. That was with the Chief Minister.
Yeah.
DHSC is going before on the 12th of May.
So you're still holding it till
next
then.
week. So
keep your powder dry.
I'm a traditionalist when it comes to Parliament.
I know.
You shouldn't do anything that is disrespectful to the committee. So anything you're going to say should be said at the committee first.
I am still intrigued that you are saying to me here it's going to be point by point rebuttal. I mean that's something, isn't it? You know, not that we were maybe right on some, we may be wrong on others, but you are literally. You put a line in the sand on this one.
In terms of what was said in relation to DHSC, most definitely.
Well,
I mean, a lot of the early part of the evidence that Dr. Glover gave, we actually agree with in terms of the genomics and everything else. But when it comes, so we should be very clear. I know. Because I said this in one of the interviews I did with you. It was basically an evidence session of two halves. Yeah. The first half of the evidence session. We fully agree with, but the other side of the session, that will be laid out to the committee where we disagree with Dr. Glover.
Can't wait. And finally, and there's a few on the same lines, the Ireland Community Helpline advises that children, including babies, must undergo testing in line with the border level 3 regulations, although through to level 1, which is a different approach to the UK and Channel Islands. And this person and somebody else, personal interest, they've got very young children, and they think it will be distressing and upsetting and probably, very distressing for them. So a few on that, and I think that kind of covers the main topic of you're forcing these young children where other jurisdictions are not.
Yeah, we've always been very clear on this in relation to the fact that everyone must be tested. Because of the incubation period, it is quite possible for a child to test positive but the parents not to, because the parents, although they might still have the virus, are in the early incubation stages and vice versa. So everyone is tested. So you could equally have had a case where the parents were infected and they are getting over the virus. They won't test positive on arrival, but they have passed it to the baby. and if you don't test the child, then basically the child may come in, be seen by other relatives. It is highly unlikely if you're bringing a child into the island, they're going to stay away or socially distance from other relatives, because the whole point of you coming in is to see those people. So that in that way the infection can spread.
And on from that, why are you choosing PCR tests and not the lateral flow test? Because, and this is always going to be up for discussion. The UK government have a recent report showing that lateral flow testing can be about 99.9% effective. Well,
Right,
you've always had less than 50.
Well, actually, this is one particular report. I know exactly who sent that to you, Paul, because
You've had the same copy?
I've had discussions with them actually this morning.
Oh, right.
And the report that they have actually sent, it found specificity. But one of the things with that report is the report made quite clear itself. It was done under clinical conditions. It wasn't done necessarily out in the field. The lateral flow tests were all undertaken by professionals under supervision. So the people who were under supervision of professionals when the tests were taken, and they are actually, what the report looked at was using it as a population surveillance tool. The report didn't look at it as saying this is a test you should be using to decide whether someone needs to isolate longer or for a set period or for travel. They were using it as population surveillance. Now we know from other reports where, for instance, there's been other reports, particularly around studies in Liverpool, Manchester, where the specificity of the test has been found to be completely and utterly different.
Isn't there any point, though, where you go, well, hang on, everyone else is doing this now, let's go with it,
Well, like I say, lateral flow is useful if you're wanting to do population surveillance in that way. But it's not necessarily useful for what we would want to be doing at the moment, which is in terms of people coming into the island, monitoring them. And also we've got to remember, if we move to level 2, then the isolation criteria at the end of this month will be massively reduced anyway. We have stuck rigidly with PCR testing. It is the most accurate form of testing that there is, and we still trust in the PCR testing.
I did actually have one more question which came in the week I forgot to do. Someone travelling back from New Zealand, they're resident of the Isle of Man, and they're going through Terminal 2 at Heathrow. So they land at Terminal 2, take off from Logan Air to Terminal 3. What's their position? Do they can get through and do the self-isolating here in the island, or they don't get trapped in the UK?
I don't think New Zealand's on the red list for the UK.
They've pretty got nothing, have they?
Exactly. So I'd be very surprised if New Zealand. I must be honest.
Is it country by country though? Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
The isolation in the UK is if you're on a red list country,
Supposing
so
it's not.
So if it's not, they can still transfer within the common travel area. They come back here and they'd have to isolate.
So what is that length in London though? Is it literally you're transferring? You can't.
No, you would isolate. No, if you went off into the UK, you would have to isolate for the period you're in the UK.
So while you're at the airport, mask on maybe and whatever.
Yeah.
Do much.
So if you had an overnight stay, for instance, in the UK, you would isolate for that period before you travelled on. But like I say, it's based on the red and green list countries. So if it's a red list country, then they've got to do the 10 days isolation in the UK before they can travel onto the island. But I would be very surprised. Like I say, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'd be very surprised if New Zealand was on the UK's red list.
Yeah, I don't think it is. Especially Australia and New Zealand, they have their own bubble going on.
But also, of course, it also classes for any countries you might have travelled through. So depending if they stopped off in any countries on the way back from New Zealand,
which they would have done, of course.
If that's a red list country, then the red list applies to them.
Headaches on this, isn't there?
So I just need to clarify that. I always get that clarification.
No.
If it's not a direct flight, which it's unlikely to
Can't
be
yet.
from New Zealand. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think the technology is quite there for that yet. It would depend upon the stopover country. If the stopover country is a red list country, then they will have to do the isolation in the UK.
Well, thank you for your time. I know you're meant to be at some of the briefing, no doubt, as usual, in lunches. And we'll see you again next week. All being well. And you're doing press conference on Thursday? Is it too late to say?
Yes, yeah.
There will
be the press conference on Thursday.
Let's go and keep that out, is it?
Yeah, for the time being.
Just as a general update.
Just as a general update.
People shouldn't panic up front.
No, people
Because I actually put that on a tweet to say don't panic last time when you had it on Monday, because people were off to Tesco again at the time. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. But no, people shouldn't be concerned when, if we have something to impart to the public, we will do so in a timely manner.
So Thursday's good. If it's another day, it might be more.
Well, we always tend to try and badge it up as well. I'd always urge people to read the brief round. So when we went out, as you'll know, Paul, with the press release about the Monday one, we were very clear that it was to update on the border situation and also the isolation rules. So we did badge that up.
Right.